Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Selene. If you're not, welcome back to my weird and wonderful life. Now today it's going to be a bit of a different video. Oh my god, I sound like those YouTubers that are like,
today it's gonna be different, guys. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do what I did.
No, obviously I'm not making an apology video because I have nothing to apologise for and no one to really apologise to. What I mean by it's going to be a bit of a different video is it's not going to be a funny, silly video. I mean, humour is my coping mechanism, so if I do make a few jokes, I do apologise. I don't necessarily find the topic funny. That's how I cope, I guess. I saw this video the other day on YouTube from a guy called Anthony Padilla. I really like him, and he does this thing where he like spends a day with people who have schizophrenia, or spends a day with people who consider themselves as an otherkin or something like that. And he did one recently where it was like spent a day with people who have OCD or suffer from OCD. And I was watching it and I actually found it quite hard to watch, which I wasn't expecting, because it just triggered me a little bit, and I was just like, oh my god, like this does really affect me on a day-to-day more than I actually thought it did. And I don't know, it inspired me to kind of want to start a series on this channel. Most of my content will still be silly, funny, me taking the piss out of myself, self-deprecating humour, that kind of thing. That's not going to change. But I want to do like a series maybe every few weeks, or not like a time scale on when I'm going to upload them, but I want to make a little mini series called like, I think I'm going to call it like Real Talk or something like that, where I have more of a serious video. I discuss more serious topics, things that are important to me, things that I think might be beneficial or helpful to other people, because at the end of the day, mental health is a big part of my life, and why should I not use the platform that I'm trying to use to entertain people to also spread awareness or spread positivity. I wanted to start it with a video about OCD because my mental health issues all kind of started from that, and that is like where it all began for me with my OCD, when I kind of became aware of mental health and like disorders and all that jazz. So I kind of just wanted to do a video. I mean, I've talked about it in my podcast, but I kind of wanted to do like a video on it as well, because I don't know, I feel like it's more personal when you can see the person. I don't know, it's something important to me, so I thought it would be worth doing a video about it, because I just think if you do come across this, if you do suffer from OCD, then I hope this kind of helps you or makes you feel, less alone, or I don't know, when I've watched anxiety videos on YouTube where people have talked about their anxiety, it's made me feel a lot better about myself, it's made me feel less alone, it's made me feel, I don't know, it just put me in a better mood, weirdly. So if this does that for someone else, makes them feel less alone, makes them feel less weird, because I definitely felt very weird when I had it at the beginning, and I still do sometimes, then great, that's all I want from this. And also I kind of want to do it for people who don't really understand it, who seem to think, there's so many stereotypes of what OCD is, and it's so frustrating when people bring them up. And obviously, like, I try not to get annoyed about it, because I just think that's just lack of knowing and education on the topic, and like people aren't trying to necessarily be mean, but it comes from a lack of knowledge and a lack of understanding of what they're talking about or what they're discussing. So I can't get mad at them, because like, as much as mental health is more widely talked about now, which is amazing, and like depression and stuff is more talked about, I personally still think OCD is quite, like, I'm not just pinpointing OCD, there are many mental health disorders and issues that aren't talked about as much. I just don't think OCD and stuff is necessarily that widely talked about. Honestly, that I think if I sat down all my friends, and I forgive me if I'm wrong, if you guys are watching this, but if I sat down most of my friends who didn't really, like, haven't suffered from OCD, or like, I don't know, it's not something you're really going to know much about unless you have it, or you have someone in your family that has it or whatever. And I admit that there are many mental health disorders that I don't know a lot about, because I haven't suffered from them, and I don't know many people or anyone who has suffered from them. So I'm not like having a go at people or whatever, I'm just saying, like, if I sat down with a group of my friends, or most of my friends, I guarantee that they would all think of OCD as such a stereotype of what it is, and that is so inaccurate, because it's so much more than that. And you might be thinking, oh, what do you mean by this stereotype? I don't really understand what you mean. Well, I'm not saying it now, because I'll get into that as I get on with the video. This is just a severely long introduction. Just once I start talking about mental health, I don't seem to know how to stop. So that's what I wanted this video to be today. So it's a serious video. I'm going to try not to joke too much, because it's not something to joke about. That's just my coping mechanism. So yeah, basically, for people who suffer from OCD, I hope this helps them, makes them feel better. And for people who don't have OCD or don't know much about it, I hope this gives you more of an understanding. So rather than me rambling on now, let's get on with it and I'll ramble some more for you. So let's kind of begin by me explaining my story with OCD. A lot of you might already know that story. Some of you won't, some of you will know bits of it, some of you know more than others. It's just who I'm comfortable with telling things to. I think there's only one person, one of my friends, and she knows who she is. That's because she's like my best friend in the entire world and I love her to bits, and she's like a sister to me. And my parents know the whole extent of how bad it got and like the things that happened and things I did, just because like there's just some things that even if I'm super comfortable with a person, it's just really hard to talk about. And like also depends on the day, sometimes I get really emotional about it. I'm hoping I don't today. Also, if it looks like I'm crying, I'm not. I'm generally not crying out. I don't know why my eyes keep going really red recently when I put makeup on. But yeah, so not a lot of people know the extent of the things I did. Most people don't, if I'm being honest. They know a lot, the people who I've told, but not everything, because there's just certain things that I find I can't talk about, and I'm definitely not going to talk about it here because this is going to be on the internet and I just don't feel quite ready to go there. But with time, if this does really well, if people reach out to me or whatever, which I'm not saying they will, but let's say they do, then I might do, because obviously at the end of the day, if it would help someone else, then I'd be willing to do that, because you know, I don't want anyone else to feel like what they're doing is weird because I did and it felt like shit. So God, I really hope I don't fucking cry. I don't want to do that. I hate crying in front of people. So it's quite funny actually, because my mum, when we talk about it, says that she saw signs of me having it when I was really little. Like apparently she told me the other day actually that when I was really little, I can't remember the whole thing she said actually, I can't remember the whole what exactly it was, but she said when she used to read me books, like bedtime stories, if she missed a word or she messed up a word or I messed up a word or whatever, I would make her restart the story. So it would take forever for her to read me a bedtime story because I just make her restart from the beginning. But at that age, I didn't notice it. It didn't affect me on a day-to-day. Like it didn't hinder my life in any way. I didn't feel compelled to do things. But obviously my mum noticed it and she kind of didn't say anything because probably at the time she didn't think much of it, or you know, it wasn't affecting me. So I think she said that she used to just like find a way to just get around it because obviously she kind of wanted to go to bed. But I don't remember this. I have no recollection of this happening. But for me, from when I remember it, is I was about, I think I'd just gone into senior school, high school, whatever you want to call it. So I was about I think like 11. So I've had it for a good 12, 13 years. So it still gets bad, but I've kind of like mastered it to an extent. I feel quite knowledgeable about it. So how it happened for me, and this is what I mean, this is the weirdness of OCD and how random it is and what people might not understand, and it's just bizarre. But for me, how it all started, bit of context, my parents separated when I was 5. My mum rented accommodation, so she moved quite a lot. And in the last place we rented before she finally bought a place, we had this kind of infestation of fleas. And you're probably like, what the fuck are you talking about? Exactly, this is my point, that's how weird it is. So we had this infestation of fleas and it freaked me the fuck out. Like it really freaked me out. I would wear white socks around the house to see if they were there. Like it honestly, anytime I saw a little black dot anywhere, I would like, the hairs on my back would rise, like I would get really warm and have almost like a panic attack. I don't know why it affected me so much. I mean, no one likes them. They infest, they multiply by the second, they are a bitch to get rid of. It just really affected me more maybe than the average person, I don't know. So we had fleas, and then we moved to my mum's, oh no, sorry, we didn't move to a place my mum bought, we then moved to another rented accommodation. And we moved there, and for me, I'd never seen, I don't know how, it's so hard to explain this so it makes sense to everyone, but in my brain it makes so much sense. But so we moved to the new rented accommodation and I never saw the fleas being gotten rid of. Like the only way I knew that you could get rid of fleas is by leaving the situation. Since then, like a few years ago, we had them, didn't really bother. I mean, obviously I didn't like them, as anyone wouldn't like them. Didn't bother me too much, got over it. We fumigated the place, they went, and I've seen it, how you can live in a place without having to leave if you get a flea infestation. But at the time in my brain, my thought was the only way to get rid of fleas is by moving. And my mum's not going to move every time we had a flea infestation, is she? Like, People don't have that kind of money. So that's how my brain kind of saw it. So I freaked out at the idea of ever getting fleas again, because I knew we wouldn't be able to move that easily. So I knew I was kind of stuck, I guess, and it freaked me out. I don't know how to explain it properly, but yeah, that's the whole context of it. So we moved to this new place, didn't have OCD, but was freaked out by fleas. So we were in the new place, and I think one day I was going to bed and I saw something black on the end of my bed, and I went to touch it and I thought it jumped. Now, it may have been one left over. It probably wasn't. It was probably a bit of fluff that kind of just moved, but I thought it jumped. And from that point on, that's when my OCD really started. I saw that, and that for some reason just triggered my OCD, which at the time I had no idea what it was. I didn't know what OCD was. I'd never heard of it. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. All I knew, I had to do like these rituals, I had to do these certain things, I had to almost like repent, I guess. I don't know, because I'm not religious, so I don't really know where that came from, but I almost got a bit religious, but I still wasn't religious at the same time. I don't know how to explain it. It's so hard to explain. I had to do loads of things. Like, I would, in the mornings, it would take me, I think, 2.5 hours to get ready for school in the bathroom, and we had one bathroom and I blocked it for my mum and my brother. I remember going to a party once and I just didn't want to go because every time I had to go to the bathroom it would take me like 2.5 hours. Like, if I just needed to pee, it would take me about an hour in the bathroom. No one else could use the bathroom. I can't remember what I used to do. I cannot remember the rituals I used to do, but it used to take me hours. Like, for this party I was late, for school I was always late, because it would take me so long to get ready, because I had to do all these rituals in my bed, do all these rituals in my bathroom before I could, you know, just be normal. And then at school I used to be really bad, because like I used to do this thing where I'd like go over every word over and over, no, every letter even, over and over and over and over and over again until it felt right. And like, it took me forever to write anything. My writing was horrific, obviously, because of it. And like, I had to do little rituals all the time throughout the day that I didn't feel like I could ever hide. So I also kind of, I'll be honest, I became a loner. I had no friends until about year 9, which was weird because before that I had no issue with friends. I had friends, but it got to senior school, and I would say from year 7 through to year 9, I didn't really have any friends. I had like 1 or 2 friends, and that's mainly because I isolated myself and made myself seem a bit like weird. And also at that age, kids don't really understand, and if anyone saw me doing weird stuff, they would have thought I was weird. And that's why I do think people need to be more educated, because that you shouldn't be made to feel that way when you, like, it's just a lack of understanding. And also it's being a kid. Like, I'm not angry at those kids for behaving in a certain way, because to be honest, I was very lucky. The school I went to, I could have gone to a school where I got severely bullied for it, but I didn't really. I got a bit like made fun of here and there, but most of it was me isolating myself from other people because I just didn't want people to know about it, because I couldn't hide it. It was very obvious, I feel, that I had it. Like, I couldn't hide it. I fucking hated school for the good first 2 or 3 years, and like, I wasn't necessarily the most confident person before, but my confidence just went like that. I had no confidence. It shattered my confidence. I felt like a weirdo. I felt like undesirable. I felt unlovable. I just felt like an outcast at my own doing, really. And to be honest, I'm not gonna lie, that still's affected me to this day in a lot of ways. Unfortunately, I think my inferiority complex, or my lack of feeling attractive, or my lack of feeling like desirable or whatever, really going off topic here, but I think a lot of it stems from that, because I just felt like a weirdo and not normal. That I think I still carry that with me, and like, I've got a lot better with it, but it stuck. It hit me at an age where I think you develop a lot and you learn a lot and grow a lot, which is your first few like years of being a teenager, like pre-teen, whatever. And I think unfortunately I've carried that through, and as much as it's got better, as much as I've got more confident, underlying, I think I've always got this thing like, am I weird? Am I desirable? Whatever, like no one's gonna love me. So that's when it all started for me. Saw a therapist that didn't really help, and then saw a therapist that literally changed my life. And then it got to like year 9, I started like being able to hide it better. It got a lot better. Like, it didn't really affect me. Like, before then, my day revolved around my OCD. Like, my OCD controlled everything I did, and it affected everything I did. Whereas then, after a while, in year 9, or like end of year 8, beginning of year 9, it started to ease up, and like, it affected me. Of course, it still affected me, but like nowhere like it did. Like, I lived my life and then had to do a few rituals here and there, and not everything I did revolved around rituals, and my OCD controlled everything I did. It literally just affected me to an extent, and I could hide it. and no one really knew I had it, but I was still funny about telling anyone. And I still remember in year 9 there was this girl who I was really close with, and she told me about something that she had, and then I told her about mine, and that's the first time I'd ever told anyone, and oh my god, it felt so good to tell someone. And that's when it all kind of changed even more. I got less like ashamed of it, and I told more people. I wasn't just going around being like, by the way, I have OCD, I have OCD, I have OCD. I just mean like it came into conversation. I told more and more people. I started becoming friendly with people, so I got better. And like now I still have it, and to be honest, at the moment it's got quite bad again. It will never ever ever, I don't think, I hope, get to what it was at the beginning, but like it's got quite bad again, and it's affected me quite a lot. But I find when I'm more stressed, when I'm more alone, like not busy, like I'm busy but not busy out and about and seeing people or whatever, it does kind of get worse because I'm more in my head, or when I'm more stressed, it flares up because I'm more stressed, so that aggravates it. It's just a trigger for me. And so because of coronavirus, obviously I'm more alone, I am more in my head, and I am just generally more stressed. So it's understandable, I think, but it's a lot better now than it was. And my trigger now, though, unfortunately, because my trigger used to be like, I felt if I didn't do certain things, we'd get fleas, which is so bizarre, but that's how it affected me. But now my trigger is if I don't do certain things, something's going to happen to a family member of mine, or something's going to happen to me, or, you know. And so when I think there's something wrong with a family member or something wrong with me, it does flare up as well, because I feel like if I really don't do something, then something is going to be wrong, or something is going to happen. It's very infuriating, because I don't see that ever going, because like, you know, of course no one ever wants anything to happen to their family, whereas infestation of fleas isn't going to be the end of the world. It's just a case of keeping it at bay and doing what I can to make it better. And so yeah, I still have to see therapists every now and then. I still have times where it does get unbearable, and I honestly feel like I'm on the verge of a mental breakdown. A lot of that is happening recently. I do feel like it's just too much, but it's a lot better than it was. And let that be kind of like, if you do have it and you're at the worst of it and you don't see like it getting any better, let this be a positive thing for you. I can't think of the word. It can get better, and it will get better. You just need to, why am I going about better? You just obviously need to get the treatment and help that you need. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, because I generally at the start didn't think it was ever going to get better. And now, yeah, it's shit at times, and yeah, I hate it, and yeah, sometimes I just want to cry my eyes out, because it's just like, why can't this fucking go away? Because it literally hinders me in so many ways. But it's not what it was, and it's minimal compared to what it was. Like, it doesn't take me 3 hours to get ready in the morning. It takes me normal, and then sometimes maybe a bit longer at times if it's just a bit stressed and I have to like maybe touch something more than I would usually, or whatever, you know. I just kind of want to talk more like statistics and like what OCD is and all that kind of thing. So I kind of talked about how it started for me and where I am now. I haven't really talked about in depth the things I did. I will in a bit. But so for people who don't really know much about OCD, and some of these stats, to be honest, I didn't even know, like I wasn't aware of. So, and I have OCD, so it's not me being like, you should know these. No, but it's good information to know. This is more for people who, I guess, don't have it and want to learn more about it, or like do have it and like me didn't necessarily understand all of it. Most of this I did obviously already know, but some of it I was like, oh, actually, I have it and I didn't know that. So I knew this, but OCD is quite a common disorder, and 750,000 people suffer from it at one time. 1.2% of the population suffer from it, so every 12 in 1,000 people suffer from OCD. Again, that's quite a high percentage. So it's not an uncommon disorder. That's why I also do feel like it should be more talked about, and people should have more knowledge on it, because it's not exactly like it's rare, you know, and maybe people do, but like, I don't personally see that. Like, I think now is what I find amazing is like now obviously with social media and stuff, there's a lot of things about social media that aren't great. There are a lot of things about it that have been helpful, and I think that's like educating people further. And you know, in some ways, like I think social media and the internet has helped with mental health, because more people talk about it, more people use their platforms to talk about stuff like that and normalize it and everything like that, which before I don't think, you know, there wasn't as much of a reach for that. There wasn't really, at a point, there wasn't internet, there wasn't social media, so there wasn't as much of a reach, and it wasn't as widely talked about. And it used to be the case of like, if you had it, suck it up and get over it. And you can see that with like parents. Like, my parents are very supportive, but there are times when I think they have that attitude too. And my mum has this attitude of going, why does it seem like everyone has a mental health problem now? And yeah, unfortunately there are people who do latch onto the idea, and I think that's really annoying and does ruin it for the people who generally do suffer, because then they're all tarnished with the same brush. But at the same time, it's not that more people have it, people just now aren't afraid to talk about it. because before they were afraid because they knew people wouldn't give a shit or would just be like, get a fucking grip, you know? So it's not that more people have it, people just aren't hiding it anymore, which is great. But personally, I found when I was growing up, like, I don't think YouTubers were a big thing for a long time past that point. Like, I think when I was like 15, 16, that's when YouTubers became a really big thing. Maybe I'm wrong, but that was like round where it started. And obviously Instagram and stuff weren't really that big of a thing. People weren't really having careers from being an Instagram blogger or an Instagram model or whatever. Instagram was just very much like hashtag the weekend or hashtag insta filter or something like that, I don't know. So like, I personally didn't find when I was going through the worst of it that it was that widely talked about, that people were speaking about it that much, that mental health was generally talked about that much. So it's great that it is more talked about now, but I still think it's important to spread that awareness as much as you can, because I think more people should, because 750,000 people is quite a high proportion of people. So surely more people should not be so like uneducated on OCD and, you know, stereotype it so fucking much. It's so infuriating. This I didn't know. Apparently over 50% of all OCD cases are severe. I didn't realise that. Like, I didn't realise that such a high proportion were on the severe end and like only a few were on the mild end. But that's interesting to know. And the other thing I didn't realise, which made me feel a bit less like bad about how I sometimes feel like maybe I'm a bit dramatic about it, because I wouldn't say I am, but like made me realise that I'm not over exaggerating. I didn't realise, according to WHO, that they've actually rated OCD in the top 10 of the world's most disabling illnesses in the terms of like quality of life and loss of earnings, because of how debilitating and disabling it is as a disorder. I didn't realise that it was ranked that highly. Like, that's actually crazy when you think about it. And I can definitely say, like, I wouldn't say loss of earnings, but like it's definitely diminished my quality of life in a lot of ways, especially at the start of it. Like, it was I lost so much weight, I was so depressed, and like I honestly hated waking up in the morning. And I mean, I've never had like a suicidal thought or anything like that, but like life was like, I genuinely remember once I said to my mum, like, I was in bed and I was doing rituals and my mum was lying there watching a movie with me, and I just kind of went, I can't do this. Like, I was 11, bearing in mind I was 11, and I just turned around and went, I can't do this anymore. Like, I just don't want to, it'd just be so much easier if I wasn't here. And like, it was an awful thing to say and I never meant it in that way, but like, that shows how much it just completely destroyed my life. Like, I literally hated getting up in the morning because I knew that was just a whole day of me doing rituals and a whole day of me just feeling stressed and depressed and anxious and sad and lonely and just not being able to do anything because everything took me fucking forever because of my OCD, you know. I find for me one big thing actually is that like I get a lot of brain fog because there's so much going on in my brain, like literally so much going on in my fucking brain, that sometimes I just, and this is a more recent thing, this has happened in the last 6 months, I sometimes get really I get so overwhelmed because there's so much noise in my head, and I just have to sit there sometimes, and I know it sounds ridiculous, but I block my ears. There's no noise, there's literally no noise, but I'll have to sit there and like block my ears so I can really think and focus on my thoughts. And sometimes unfortunately it happens, and I've noticed like I feel like people, especially people who don't know me, think I'm just miserable, and unfortunately I do have a massive fucking resting bitch face so I can't help that. But like there are times when I'm so in my head and like, you know, mentally doing rituals because they're not all physical, or like overthinking things or whatever, and the noise of people talking around me I can't cope with, and I kind of just like shut off. Like I'm just not there. Like I shut off, or I'll have to leave the room, I'll have to go to the bathroom and have like clear my head, or go outside for the air and clear my head. And people think like I'm being dramatic, and it's just because I can't cope. Like I struggle a lot. So that's a big thing that affects me now, and that'd be nice if I could control that. But you know, compared to what it was, I would never complain, and I would take that any day over how I used to be. So yeah, so I guess it can just diminish quality of life for me still to an extent, because sometimes I'm not fully present, or like at work sometimes I feel like people might think, is she slacking off? When I'm not slacking off, I just end up going in my mind about my OCD for a good half hour and like, fuck, I actually need to be working, but it's like I have no control over it. And I've actually had to I don't want to tell my work because I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, but I was like, no, I guess it's important because it's better they know that than they think I'm like just being a lazy bitch and slacking off, you know. I kind of want to do it now in a kind of section it out as like kind of break down the meaning of it, say how it impacts people's lives a bit more, and kind of want to talk about common misconceptions of what OCD is. OCD, obviously, I think a lot of us know what it stands for, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. I found a few descriptions online. I'm not taking credit for these because I know what it is myself, but I wouldn't necessarily be able to describe it. So what are obsessions? Obsessions are distressing or frightening repetitive thoughts which come into your mind automatically, however irrational they may be. Some people describe these thoughts as being like a stuck record, and trying to stop them can sometimes make it worse. So like, I find I get obsessive. I don't know if that's because of my OCD, but anything. For example, I get really obsessive about my future and my career, and like I feel I have this weird thing that I think if I lose any control over the thought, and if I don't keep repeating and thinking this is what's going to happen, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this, blah blah blah, I'm going to lose it. And I'm going to, as soon as I lose any control, or if I don't latch onto it, and if I don't keep repeating it in my head, it's not going to happen because I'm going to lose sight of it, which is so stupid because obviously that's not the case, but like, I'm aware it's irrational. People with OCD experience unwanted obsessions which take the form of persistent and uncontrollable thoughts, persistent images, impulses, worries, fears, or doubts, or a combination of all these things. They are always intrusive, unwanted, disturbing, and most importantly, significantly interfere with the sufferer's ability to function on a day-to-day basis, as they are incredibly difficult to ignore. So like, irrational thought, like they said, intrusive thought, so I mean, I'll explain more examples later, but for me, like I might, you know, imagine something happening to my parents, and then I feel like it's just an intrusive thought, I can't get over it, and because I've thought that thought, I have this stupid thing inside me that I think, you've thought that thought, fuck you, we're gonna punish you. It's like so irrational, but you can't, like, even me saying it's irrational makes me feel guilty, because it's like, well no, fuck you, it's not irrational. Like that's it's hard to explain, and it's hard to do this because I'm probably gonna freak out after it, but so that's what I mean. It means by like irrational thoughts, intrusive thoughts, whatever. And again, most importantly, which I already said, people with OCD usually realise that their obsessional thoughts are irrational, but at the same time feel so very real, and they believe the only way to relieve the anxiety caused by these thoughts is to perform compulsive behaviours, which is very accurate, because I know the things I'm thinking are irrational, but at the same time they feel so real, and I think if I even a tiny bit let myself realise or believe that they are irrational, I'll be punished, so I have to do something. And like, this is what I mean when I say mine gets better and worse at times, is sometimes I can just be like, no, fuck this, I'm fine, and I'll get over it, but sometimes I really can't like push through. So that's what obsession is. Now for the compulsive side. So this is what the descriptions I found are. Compulsions are actions which people feel they must repeat to feel less anxious, to stop their obsessive thoughts. For example, someone may have an obsessive thought about germs and the disease they could catch. To cope with the anxiety, they may start washing their hands over and over again. Other compulsive rituals may have no connection to the nature of the obsessive thoughts. I would probably say I fall under that. So these are two examples of what I want to talk about later. One, in the misconception that people assume that OCD is all about germs, which is absolute fucking bullshit. There are people who have it for that reason, but there are plenty of people who have it for other reasons. But also mine, I would say, falls under the kind of, the rituals are not remotely, my rituals are never really remotely related to what I'm trying to control or stop. They are literally just like so random. Like, for example, it might be like me looking at something and I have to look at it a certain amount of times, or, you know, I can't even explain it. Like, I feel a bit embarrassed to talk about it, which I shouldn't, and I'm trying not to, because I want people to know that they shouldn't be embarrassed about talking about it, because you're not weird for having it, there's nothing wrong with having it. What I'm trying to say is I should be more open about the things I do and not feel weird or uncomfortable about saying them, because I don't want other people to then be like, oh, if she feels weird and uncomfortable about saying them, then maybe it is weird. Whereas like, if I'm open about it, people might be like, fuck, she's being open and honest, she doesn't give a shit, I don't give a shit, you know. That's the kind of attitude I want more. Like, there's nothing, because there shouldn't be anything to give a shit about, there's nothing wrong with it. So basically, for me, something like, I might have a bad thought about me getting ill or something, and I think if I look at, I've got a plant up there, I think if I like draw a number of circles around the tip of that plant with in my mind until it feels just right, which is a type of OCD, but I think I fall into a few categories of different types of OCDs, but until it feels like just right, then I feel better and I think I'll be okay. If I don't, sometimes like I can let go of it if I'm not, like, my OCD is not too bad, but sometimes like now it is, and I won't be able to like do anything else or concentrate on anything else until I've finished circling around the tip of that, you know, flower until it feels right when I look at the tip of it. Like, that in my head makes so much sense, but you're probably thinking, sorry, what? And if you have OCD, you're probably still thinking, I don't have that, but I get you. So this is what I mean. Like, it's not, people have such a misconception because they probably wouldn't have thought that's something that someone would do. Majority of the time, mine literally have no connection with what I'm trying to avoid, or the obsessive thought. whereas some people obviously it does connect. Another bit of an example is typically the individual experiences a sense of resistance to the act, but this is overridden by a strong subjective drive to perform the action. Most often the principal aim behind the compulsive behaviour is to generate relief, which is usually only temporary, which is so true. And that's the thing, like I might look at that flower and feel good for about 10 minutes and then I'll find another object in my room that I have to do it on because it's only temporary. Hopefully that makes sense to you, what obsessive compulsive disorder actually stands for and like the components of what it is. If it didn't, and just for further information, here are like a few examples. One thing that used to happen to me is, so obviously as I said, my OCD used to be triggered towards I feared that if I didn't do certain things we would get another infestation of fleas. So yeah, so that's what my OCD used to be based upon. Like it wasn't anything to do with like health and my family's health. It was just purely down to the fact that I thought if I didn't do certain things, we would get fleas again. And I used to find that when I would sometimes like fight my intrusive thoughts and fight the compulsions, I would almost like, you know, my mind would play a trick on me and I would almost make myself believe I saw a flea on the floor, which 9 times out of 10 was probably just a piece of fluff. And so that would be like, oh, I've fought the compulsion, I've been punished now, I've like kind of sinned, I guess. I need to do the compulsion. I can't ever not do it again because this was what will happen, I will be punished. And so then I'll end up doing the compulsion 3 times worse than I did it originally because I was like, because I tried to fight the compulsion, this is what's happened, there's fleas. When realistically that was a piece of fluff, but your brain literally fucks you over and like convinces you that that's a flea. So that's an example of how it used to kind of be. Little rituals that I might do, like I said about the flower thing, or I mean it doesn't have to be a flower, I'm just looking at flowers, like it can be a pattern on a wall or something. I'll like, at the moment I have this thing where I have to circle around until it feels right. I can't explain it, it sounds bizarre. Or like with my phone, I have to click my phone before I get to bed, like off and on a certain amount of times. I have to always like pat my feet down before I get into bed, and it has to feel right. Mine's very much like it has to feel right, and that's why like I get really funny about brushing up against people accidentally or whatever, because if it doesn't feel right the way I've accidentally brushed against a person, it really triggers me. I don't have to go back and do it again, but it affects me. And a big thing for me, and it bothers me so much, it's so annoying, is like with cups and stuff, I have to like tap on them a certain amount of times when I put them down, and it has to feel right. Or like for me, I'm very like, positions of things have to be right. I have to be positioned right. They have to be in a particular position, and that may not be straight to some people. It may not be a perfect position. It may not be super neat, but it works for me. It's what makes me feel okay. And like that's why I'm really funny about cleaning my room, because then I have to put everything in the just right position it was in before. And a lot of mine are like mental. Like a lot of the time I have to go over things and over things in my head, and you know, so that's why sometimes when I'm out with people, partially because like sometimes I just, you know, get overwhelmed and like so just shut off, so I'm not necessarily thinking anything. But part of the time is because I'm doing like rituals in my head, and so people won't be like aware of me doing it, but they'll be like, why is she look so grumpy, or like why is she, probably thinking like, why is she okay? But I'm fine, I'm just so in my head and I need to do these things or I can't continue. So there'll be times when I'm out and I'll just kind of zone out for a little bit, and I do it more with family because I care less about, because my family obviously know totally about it, and because I'm quite good at controlling it now, I can sometimes, you know, deal with the frustration and uncomfortableness I have if I don't do it when I'm with friends, because I don't want them to know. Whereas with family, I'm just like, fuck it, I'll do it. They don't care, they know all about it, so they'll know why I've zoned out. Whereas with friends, I might be like, oh, but then obviously that makes it worse sometimes, because then I'll have to like really like go overdrive afterwards or something to like, not redeem myself, I don't know how else to explain it, but like make up for what I didn't do, if that makes sense. But there are even times when I'm with friends and they might be like, are you okay? Or they might realise that I've zoned out and then just go back into conversation normally, because in that time I'm doing things like, but a lot of mine are mental, and I think a lot of people don't realise that as well. People assume that they're all physical things, and actually a lot of OCD is quite mental, and a lot of people are quite good at hiding it. That's the kind of little rituals I do. I can't think of like a lot of them, and I'll probably finish recording this and be like, fuck, I do this and I do this and I do this, but I couldn't think of it at the time, because like I said, I do so much and it's so second nature to me that I would have to really sit down and remember the little things I do. I remember things I used to do because I don't do them anymore. For example, things I used to do when I was really bad, I actually have this thing where I would refuse, apart from school, because obviously I couldn't not go to school, I would literally refuse to leave the house if it was an odd day of the week. Like if it was the 23rd, I couldn't leave the house. If it was the 24th, I could, but if it was the 25th, I couldn't. So like if my mum wanted to go to shops and it was like the 21st, I'd be like, I can't do it today. it needs to be tomorrow. I can't leave the house. You know, like I don't know what rituals I used to do in the bathroom, but like I said, it used to take me an hour and a half, 2 hours to get ready because I would be doing all these rituals, but I actually don't remember what they were. Sometimes now I do have that saying the stereotypical thing, but with like cracks in the floor, and like I have to, you know, when I'm walking sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes I have to walk on a certain amount of cracks, or I have to, it's not even like I can't walk on the cracks, I have to walk in a certain position or whatever so it feels right. And I'm definitely sure people have noticed that when I'm walking down the street sometimes and thought, is she okay? But again, that's not all the time, and it's dependent on how bad I am that day. Or like with songs, for example, like I have to sometimes restart the song, pause and put it on a certain amount of times, or like switch the screen on a certain amount of times when I'm listening to it, and like really look at the image of the song when I'm listening to it. And if I don't, then I have to like keep doing it until it feels right. Like, it's the most random, bizarre things that are so hard to explain, because probably you listening to this now are like, what? What are you talking about? But that is just what OCD is. Like, you do things that don't really make sense to other people, but to you they do make sense, and to you generally think by doing that, your brain convinces you that you will protect yourself or other people. So those are like small rituals, specific rituals that I do, but like broader things that I find like, and I know people have definitely noticed this, and unfortunately I can come across to a lot of people as a bit stupid and a little bit like, not uncertain, but like not confident in my points, or like, and I've noticed this with my friends from home a lot. I mean, I used to always feel inferior to them anyway, which is so stupid, because, and I know they don't, I'm not saying because they're not better than me, but what I'm trying to say is like, they would be like, why did you feel that way? Because they don't think they're better than me. What I'm trying to say is just, it was stupid, because obviously I was like, they were popular, I wasn't, because of everything, and then it was stupid. I don't know, I don't anymore. I think when I have conversations with them or whatever, I find that a lot of the time I feel like people think I'm stupid, so they don't listen to my point, because they're like, what is she talking about? She doesn't know what she's talking about, because that's my own fault, because I've created that idea that I don't know what I'm talking about. Because this is something that I do that's so frustrating. I'm looking at my laptop here because I've written it down. I find I can never be certain or confident about anything, even if I am. So for example, let's say like there's a piece of factual information that I know I'm right, and that the people in that room might not be right or might not know it, but I know for a fact what I'm saying is right, that the facts that I have are correct. Literally, my brain is literally like, you will not be certain about this. You will not know this. If you act like you know everything, then we're going to punish you with something bad happening to you or your family, because how dare you act like you know something for sure, like you don't know shit. So for me, then I have to kind of correct myself and be like, oh, blah blah blah, this, that and that, I think, or but I could be wrong, or whatever. I have to correct it and make it seem like I'm not certain, so that obviously gives people the impression that I don't know what I'm talking about, or aren't super confident in my response. And that's so frustrating, because I'm not stupid. I'm quite intelligent. I've got shit common knowledge, but like, I'm not stupid. I know that, but like, people assume that I'm not that intelligent, or that I'm not that confident in what I have to say, because I can never allow myself to not be like, oh, well, I think, or I could be wrong, or whatever, because I think if I don't do that, then I'm going to be punished. And so it's like, it's almost like I can't ever have a strong opinion about something, because by having a strong opinion, that makes me a bad person, which is so full of shit, and I have to like redeem myself or I'll be punished. It's ridiculous and very infuriating. So that's a few examples of how OCD affects me, and my examples of my obsessive thoughts and the things I have to do to help with them, i.e. the compulsions. Now, I actually didn't know this. For someone who has OCD, I've always said I think everyone has it to an extent. It's just on a spectrum, and I'm totally wrong. And apparently you cannot have a little OCD. That is just not a thing. If you're just a bit neat, you don't necessarily have OCD if it doesn't affect your life to the same extent, or you can get over it. So like, you may be like, oh, the way that book's positioned is really frustrating me, but you can get about your day and ignore it. Whereas someone with OCD probably would not be able to ignore it. So I think OCD is still on a spectrum, and obviously people are more severe than others, but I was definitely wrong in saying that I think everyone has it to an extent, because that is completely inaccurate apparently, and you can't just be a little OCD. But I think, again, like, people fail to understand that. People also fail to understand how much it impacts people's lives. So like I said, with school, it affected me a lot. Like, I was slow at school. I didn't want to go to school. I didn't want to write anything, because obviously I was going over my words all the time and over, and like, it took me a long time to do things. So I think my education suffered at the start. Like I said, with work, it affects me sometimes, because I feel like I had to tell them. I didn't really want to have to tell them, because I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. But then at the same time, it was flaring up at the start of lockdown and stuff, and I was kind of spacing out at times and not working because I was busy doing rituals, and I was like, I don't want them to think I'm slacking, especially as I'd only really just started the job, so I didn't want to give them a bad impression, so I had to tell them. And I think with relationships and stuff, it's definitely affected me there, because like I said, at school I kind of made myself a loner for a few years. My confidence went down massively. I didn't think guys would ever like me because I didn't ever want to tell them, because I thought they'd think I was weird. Even to this day, like the thought of opening up to someone and like letting them know everything freaks me the fuck out, because I just don't think they'll accept me for it. So it does definitely affect me in a lot of ways. And quality of life, I mean, not so much anymore, but like I said at the start, I didn't have a life, so it definitely affected my quality of life. But now, like, it might affect my quality of life in the sense of like I'm not always present, or I may some days take longer to do things, or I may zone out, or I may get overwhelmed by things really easily, so I have to leave a situation, or, you know, I'll zone out, or I'm not really involved, I'm not really present, I'm not really there. And in my mind, I'm also getting annoyed at myself and just being like, oh, you're missing fun here because you're in your head. But it's quality of life, it doesn't affect me so much anymore. It mildly affects me now with my quality of life, but it definitely, there was a point at the beginning where, like I said, I didn't have a life. So yeah, it badly affected my quality of life. Along with that, you always feel ashamed, you feel stressed, you feel anxious, you feel lonely, you feel frustrated, just so many emotions. And like, as much as I'm telling you, you shouldn't feel weird, I unfortunately still sometimes feel like I am weird for having it, and still like I feel ashamed, but you shouldn't. There's nothing weird about it, there's nothing to be ashamed about. So I kind of just want to finish with this very long video with kind of like common misconceptions people have of OCD, which I'm sure a lot of you watching this probably actually have, without sounding patronising. It's just because of how media portrays it. So some people think OCD, and this is what annoys me, is like a personality trait. So they're like, oh yeah, I've got OCD, I'm such a neat freak. No, you fucking don't. You don't. And it's not cool to have OCD. It's not a quirky thing to have OCD. It's a very debilitating disorder that makes people feel like shit and really hinders people's livelihood if it's bad. So don't, like, I hate when people just make me like, oh, I'm so OCD, I had to put my pen lid back on and put it in the right place in the pencil case or something like that, when actually realistically if they hadn't done that it wouldn't have affected them. And I used to hate it at school, and there was one girl in particular, I'm not going to name her, but she'd always be like, I'm so OCD, I'm a bit OCD about this. She may have generally been, but I think people who actually generally have OCD aren't going, I'm so OCD about this. I wasn't there going like, oh, I'm so OCD, I have to step on that crack about 5 times. You know, like, you don't want people to know, which it shouldn't be the case, but like, you don't vocalize it. It's not a cute trait that you have. Like, it's actually very annoying, and you don't want to have that. So you wouldn't be like, ah, I'm so OCD, guys. The one that really infuriates me, is when people think, oh, you got OCD, so you're just like a clean freak then, so you just a germaphobe. That is not what it is. Like, there's so much more to it, and people just seem to think that OCD, a lot of people seem to think that OCD is just about being organised or cleanliness or germs, or, I mean, yes, people with OCD, like, I've got organised OCD where like I have to put things in certain positions. That is a thing, and like germ OCD is a thing. But like, if you just wash your hands a lot because you don't like germs, or if you're just organised because that bothers you, but you can get over it. If it is in a certain position, you will get over it. Or like, you like to have your things all folded and clean, but you can get over it. That's not OCD, that's just a preference. Whereas like OCD is so debilitating that like you'll probably have to wash your hands until they're red raw because you have to keep doing it over and over again, or you have to definitely put things in the right place because it has to feel right, and you will not be able to leave that situation or go on to doing something else until it's positioned correctly. And like, that isn't everything, that isn't what OCD is completely. Like, definitely people with OCD, some people suffer from those kind of things for sure. Like, that is how some people are affected by OCD, that is how it comes out for some people. But for a lot of people, it's like worrying about people's livelihoods, or, you know, worrying about killing people, or, you know, things, like I said, it can be so specific. It's not just about being clean, it's not just about being a germaphobe, it's not about being neat, it's not about being organised. Yes, some people do suffer from that with OCD, but that doesn't mean you have OCD, and that is not what OCD is. And that's how it's perceived a lot in movies and films, and I think that doesn't help either. It's just very annoying because it's like, that's not what it is. Like, it's just not what it is. And a lot of time people don't actually realise people have OCD because a lot of it's mental, not them actually physically doing rituals. And the other thing is, it is treatable, not curable, but it's treatable, and a lot of people don't realise that. People think that once you've got it, you can't get rid of it. And let this be a prime example that I may not be cured, but like if you knew me when I had it at my worst, let's put it this way, you would know I had it. And I probably wouldn't be friends with you because I probably would have isolated myself from you, and I wouldn't be confident, I'd be really shy, I feel really awkward. You would know, you just would know that there was something up. Whereas now I don't really think people can tell unless they really know me. So it is treatable. There is light at the end of the tunnel. So for people who might be watching this, who are literally suffering so badly from it and don't see it ever getting better, it will and it can. You just need to seek help and seek medical assistance and not be ashamed or feel, you know, oh God, I have to go see a counsellor, because at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with you for having it. But if you do truly want to get better, I think it's essential, if it is really bad, that you go seek help, because that's definitely going to aid you in getting better. And last of all, you're not weird. You shouldn't feel ashamed. You shouldn't feel strange. You shouldn't feel like you don't fit in. You shouldn't feel like you don't belong because you have this thing. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing bad about having it. You're just a person that has a mental disorder that some people are affected by more than others, and that you have to do certain rituals and certain things to make yourself feel better. Obviously, it can really affect a lot of people to the point that they don't have a great quality of life, and that's when I think you need to seek help, because that can help sort that out. But at the end of the day, regardless of that, however much or little you have it, I think a lot of people have that feeling of that they're weird and strange and something's wrong with them for having it, and they should feel ashamed for having it, and you shouldn't, because you can't help it. It's a disorder. It doesn't make you any less of a person than someone who doesn't have it. It doesn't make you any less desirable than someone who doesn't have it. So that's what I just want to talk about this week. I just want to talk about OCD, and I hope it did make sense, and I hope it does help anyone who's come across it who has OCD. I hope it does help them, and anyone who doesn't, I hope it has made you understand more what OCD is. And if you are my friend and didn't realise that this is what I've been going through for the last 23 years, no, not 23 years, I'm not that old, 13, 14 years, maybe it's made you realise why I've maybe behaved in certain ways, or, you know, I guess maybe it's made you learn more about me by watching this. But yeah, so that's that. I hope it helped. I do want to make this like a series, like I said, and talk about other things, just because, like I said, when I watch these kind of videos, it makes me feel better, or it makes me have more of an understanding or whatever. So if I can make other people who have OCD feel better by watching this, that would be amazing. And if I can make people who don't have it understand it more and be a bit more aware of what it is, that's also amazing. So I think it's important to talk about these things. And as much as most of my channel is and will continue to be me being silly, I do think these are important, and I might as well use this platform as well to talk about things that really matter too. So, and things that matter to me as well. So that was the video this week. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next week for another video, which will probably be me being stupid again. Bye guys.